And now it gives me the greatest pleasure to introduce a little lady that I've known for decades. She was the bride of Walter Mize, who dreamed of a vision to listen to the promise God gave to Abraham. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee shall all nations of the earth be blessed. He wanted to bless Israel, understanding that Israel had not yet identified totally with its own promises and the fulfillment in Jesus of Nazareth. But we need to bless this generation because there's a generation to come that will truly and fully respond to Jesus Christ with the wounds in his hands. Yes. Walter was my close friend. So was his bride. After God took him home, she carried on the ministry of the Christian Heritage Foundation, and they made sure that they were able to collect for public view all 39 books of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament scrolls. And that lady is going to come now and just tell us in her own words the significance of collecting, holding, and passing on to a new generation the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament scrolls. Would you welcome Mary Ann Mize, please? Give a round of real applause to the lady who made this possible.
Well, there is a story behind this, and it didn't happen from me. I was just merely the obedient servant that God wanted me to be. So I listened, didn't realize that it was going to end up into something as marvelous as this. But back in 2006, my husband was fond of a fellow pastor in town, Kevin Bentley, at the Bono Baptist Church. Walter was an avid Bible reader, studier, and he knew that in Scripture, in Genesis 12:3, it says, God is saying, if you will bless Israel, I will bless you. And if you curse Israel, I will curse you. Walter wanted to know how could he bless Israel. And just amazingly enough, he got a call from Kevin. And Kevin said, I know you are searching and you have a yearning to know how to serve God and how can you bless God. And he said, with your interest in Israel, he said, I've got a fella that has a couple of ancient Hebrew scrolls, and he has some artifacts as well. And he is going to be at my church Sunday night. So he said, you get Mary Ann, you all come and get Charles Garrett and his wife Ruth. Charles was our director at that time, still is. But at any rate, so we went to that meeting, listened to the gentleman, and immediately after it was all over with, Walter jumps up and goes, talks with him. And he said, I want to know, where do you keep these scrolls and artifacts when you're not putting on a presentation? And he answered, I just keep them in the back of my car wrapped up in blankets. And Walter said, well, I've got a building downtown right across from the courthouse, the Christian Heritage Foundation. And we have our offices upstairs, but the foundation is downstairs. And there's an excellent room down there that could be used for a presentation. And there's chairs that can be put in. And he said, I will offer that to you free. And the gentleman said, well, I'll take you up on it. So he set up his display there. And of course, Walter has his offices upstairs. Walter was a very active businessman and was involved in numerous endeavors. He was a type A personality, and he just loved to be making deals and doing various programs in town and out of town. And so whenever he would have any of his people in, counselors, maybe businessmen, maybe lawyers, he would take them downstairs and show them these few ancient Hebrew scrolls and the Jewish artifacts. And so this went on for about a year. And each time, Walter would make an effort. He wanted to show off those scrolls. And just accidentally, maybe not, Walter had one of the best years in business that he had. And he sort of began to realize, maybe because I'm showing these scrolls to my various business friends, I'm getting a blessing from God because I'm blessing Israel. And so he really became attached to those scrolls. Well, a year goes by, and each time Walter's bringing gentlemen downstairs, telling them all about the scrolls. And in 2007, I would say, he said, I'm going to be taking my collection that I've got and moving it to Dr. Ball and the Creation Evidence Museum in Glenrose. And Walter was devastated. He said, well, I need to have some scrolls. I know what I need. I need an entire set of the Old Testament in ancient Hebrew scroll form. Okay. And so the gentleman said, when I go to Israel, I will contact an antiquity dealer and I will see what I can find for you. So that was in November of 2007. Not 2 months later, in January, God took Walter home, a sudden heart attack, and that was the end of Walter being here. He went on to heaven. Well, we'd been married for 48 years, and anyone that's married over 40 years plus, that's your partner in life now, and you truly have become one. And I have had a lot of deep grief in those early years. Well, about March or April, Charles Garrett, our director, got a call from this gentleman, and he said, I am in Israel. I have found 5 scrolls, and I know Walter's gone. Do you all still think you want to do this? And Charles said, well, let me put you on hold. Let me call Mary Ann and see what she wants to do. And so Charles calls me and told me the proposal. And I said, well, do we have funds that we can purchase these? Yes. I said, well, that's what I think Walter wanted to do. So, okay, let's do that. And that was all I thought about at that moment. Never had an idea of what are you going to do with it after you get them here. Well, another 3 or 4 months go by. Charles gets another call. And lo and behold, some more scrolls have been found. The same scenario. Charles calls me. I said, do we have funds? Yes. Okay, let's do that. So that went on for about 2 years. And we got down to the last stages in which all we lacked was the hardest, the most rarest books of the Bible. But we found out you could contract with a master scribe in Jerusalem and have the scrolls written in the kosher way that they are written, with a turkey feather, and the ink that is used is made. And so here we go. We decided to have the scrolls, the 5 or 6 scrolls written. It took about a year for each one of those scrolls. So finally, after about 3 to 3.5 years, now we have an entire set. And the community began to find out. We all know out there in the Christian world, there are Protestant churches that have a heart for Israel, and then some still have not seen the connection, and they just don't experience that heart for Israel. So they began to request that they could bring their church group in, which we did. And then it wasn't long before those pastors knew a pastor in another town or up in the metroplex of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so we began to travel. And then we're going into now the 4th to 5th year, and we began to go out of state. And then the next thing you know, we are going crisscrossing the United States from the West Coast to the East Coast, and going from Florida all the way up to practically Canada. And so this was the ministry. It finally began to dawn on me, this has turned into a ministry. I could see that it was a ministry to the Christian churches that didn't have their eyes open and have developed a heart for Israel. But regardless, I began to reflect in my mind, well, I never pursued any of this dream myself. All of a sudden, we got a call. And I'm beginning to assess all this in my mind, and I'm realizing God had his hand on this ministry.
Yes.
And this gathering of the scrolls right from the start. And so now it is quite a ministry that has developed. I've become very fond of it. It was difficult for me because I've began to see, well, what am I going to do to bless Israel now? I've donated the scrolls to Dr. Ball, and he's going to carry on from there. But what am I going to do now to bless Israel? I was equating the same way that Walter did, because I felt like each time we took this to a church, and by the way, the foundation was endowed to where we covered all of our own expenses.
Yes.
And did not charge anything to take this to the various churches. We covered all of our own expenses in these 10 to 12 years of this ministry. But now the ministry is moving on to Dr. Ball, and we both are thinking this is going to be the next chapter in the life of the ancient Hebrew scrolls. So you all will get to enjoy that. Dr. Ball probably will explain to you why they're not here today. But at any rate, this will be something to look forward to next year on October the 3rd. So I'm planning to be here, Jim. So thank you very much.
Thank you.